Hi, my name is Jessie. I feel really weird talking in front of this camera. I'd much rather be talking to you in real life and in front of an audience. So I apologize if I come off as awkward because I'm much better in front of a group of people than I am in front of a camera. But here we are. Happy COVID-19. Let's do this. The reason that I am talking to you in front of this camera, I want to introduce myself. I am a pianist, I am a photographer, and I was a recipient of the Ontario Basic Income Pilot. Back in 2017, I had 4 jobs, and they were all really shitty jobs. They were all contract work, minimum wage, no protections whatsoever. And I imagine a lot of you watching this have probably felt the same thing and the same level of stress that I felt in those days, working 60 to 80-hour work weeks and still scraping by, barely, paycheck to paycheck. It was a very stressful existence, and I was trying to do this to build a business as a freelance photographer and finding that because I was working so much, my business wasn't growing. But then the Ontario Basic Income Pilot happened. So what happened was that the Liberal government, under Kathleen Wynne, had decided to implement this pilot experiment and see what happens if we give cash to people. Unconditional, guaranteed, no strings attached, no reason whatsoever, just to see what would happen. So they chose 4 cities. They chose Hamilton, Brantford, Lindsay, and Thunder Bay. They chose 4,500 people in those 4 cities, and the only qualifying factor is that you or your family had to be living below the poverty line, which is, for a single person, $30,000 a year. So on the Basic Income Pilot, you could receive up to $1,400 a month, but if you were working, then that amount would be weaned off by 50 cents to the dollar. So like for instance, when I got basic income, I was working, so I received about $700 a month. I went to an information session because I saw a news article on social media and just thought, hey-o, I got to apply for this. Like, why wouldn't I do this? Like, this sounds like a great idea. So I went to this info session, found out all of this information, and I signed up in December of 2017. In February of 2018, I found out I had gotten a basic income. I remember the day. I got the letter in the mail in the morning, and I thought to myself, cool, got a basic income. I gotta go to work now. And I didn't even have time to process the reality that my life had changed because I had so many jobs. So I went from one job to another job to another job, and at the end of the night, all by myself, driving home alone, I thought to myself, my rent is covered. My rent is covered. Holy shit, my rent is covered. I started sobbing in the car and feeling this immense relief lifted off of my shoulders, knowing that I had this basic income and that no matter what I did next, my rent would be covered. So I saw an opportunity and I took that opportunity. I quit those jobs and I decided to focus exclusively on my photography business, knowing that with a basic income, my rent would be covered. It didn't pay a lot of my rent. Like $700 is not a lot in the market these days. However, I could pay my rent and then I could continue to work on my photography business, and that was covering all the other bills because now I had more time to put into my business. So now I was booking more clients, I was marketing myself, I was booking shoots, I had shoots that were planned into the next 2 years. I had a business plan, and that business plan projected that within 2 years I would no longer be on the Basic Income Pilot. It was meant to be a 3-year pilot, so I would have gotten off the pilot early because at that point I would have been making enough money to be able to be able to get off the Basic Income Pilot and be a full-time photographer. And I wasn't really an activist for basic income at that time because I was just busy being a photographer, collecting my basic income, living my best life. And if things had turned out differently, then I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now. So there was an election, as you're no doubt aware. The Ontario Liberal government was replaced by the Ontario Conservative government. And they had gone on the record numerous times, Doug Ford, is on the public record saying that he will not cancel the Basic Income Pilot. However, the very first thing he did when he got elected, barely a month after he took office, was cancel the Basic Income Pilot. People were furious. People were devastated. They did not communicate to any of the basic income recipients. We all found out through mainstream media at the same time as everyone else. They said that they were going to do a compassionate wind down of the pilot, but like They didn't call us at all. There was no emails. There was no letters in the mail. There was nothing and no information about what that wind down will look like. So we were left for months in the dark, terrified, realizing all of our plans had been derailed. People had paid tuition for school that they could no longer afford to go to. People had signed leases for apartments that they could no longer afford to live in. And the government just did this with literally no reason whatsoever, on a whim. So to say I was furious is an understatement. And I vowed that I would go and take the pictures of these other basic income recipients and tell their stories. So I started finding other basic income recipients. And what I started doing was I asked them, what did you use basic income for? I gave them a cardboard sign, I gave them a marker, and then they wrote out in their own words what they used basic income for. And then I took their pictures. I traveled. I started in my own home city of Hamilton, but I traveled to Lindsay, I traveled to Thunder Bay, and I had hoped to get 50 portraits for my portrait series. I got 70 portraits for my series. And now at this point, I'd like to tell you, because I would imagine you want to know, what did those Ontario basic income recipients use their basic income for? Let me tell you. This is Sarah. Sarah's actually a really good friend of mine. Basic income alleviated my stress when my income wasn't enough each month. I'm precariously employed. I'm a full-time student and a beginning manual therapist in my community. Sarah was working as a bartender while she was going to school to be an osteopath. She was barely making enough money to get by, and she would be up late at night at bars every night trying to work, trying to get everything done. And this was a sketchy bar, so it was dangerous, and oftentimes police had to be called. And then she'd be up in the morning studying and going to school, basically studying to be a doctor. Basic income allowed her to focus fully on her studies. And now because of that, she's now working as a full-time osteopath in the community and helping people. This is Dan and Justine and their daughter Julia, and in this photo, Justine's extremely pregnant. She's not pregnant anymore. The basic income program helped us move to a better apartment in a safer neighborhood and feel financially secure enough to go back to school to get a better job. Before the basic income pilot, Dan and Justine lived in a place where their daughter wasn't allowed to play in their backyard because their backyard was an alleyway where drug deals and gang activity happened very often, and the police often had to be called. So she wasn't safe to be out there. They used basic income to move into more secure housing and to move into a place that's a safer neighborhood with a backyard. So now their daughter and their son can play outside, and they can be safe outside and have that sort of security in their life. This is Tim. Basic income helps me stay healthy with good food. I am ill. Tim's family lives 5 hours away in the town of Timmins. They're not close at all. Tim has been on ODSP for several years due to a workplace injury, and he is unable to work. Seeing him on the basic income pilot, he was able to get himself out of poverty and be able to live a good life and be happy. But then also seeing the basic income pilot get canceled, we saw him fall back into poverty again, which was even more devastating to think about. This is Michael Hampson, on basic income since January 2018. It changed my life, gave me back my dignity and faith in my community. ODSP chained me in poverty, causing high stress and poor nutritional opportunities. Basic income isn't. It isn't basic. It is many-layered and healing for weed recipients and our community. Stand with us. So Michael, as you can see in the picture, he was wheelchair bound. And in this picture, he also looks very clean. He looks healthy, and he's smiling in the picture, which I thought was very odd. And I remember asking him why he was smiling, and he seemed to exude this sort of quiet hope that it was going to be okay. Michael was an activist and a strong advocate for people with disabilities. He would do what we would call crawl-ins, where he would actually physically get off of his wheelchair and crawl up to the podium or to the stage in order to make a statement about the accessibility issues and barriers that people with disability experience. I also saw Michael fall back into poverty. The last time I saw him, he did not look clean, he did not look happy, he did not look healthy, and I was nervous for him. And then he died in January of 2018. And it was that fall back into poverty, that plunge back in that depression that caused it. Michael would still be here if the government didn't cancel the basic income pilot. And I would rather pay for his life
then pay for his death. This is Tessa. Basic income means I can pay my guide dog's medical bills. ODSP does not have a drug plan for service animals. $250 a month for meds, never mind vet costs. The option was to give her back and the school would adopt her out. Basic income has allowed me to keep her and my independence. I only met Tessa once in Thunder Bay. She is legally blind and that dog is not her pet. That is her guide dog. She needs that dog. It is her tool for accessibility. I don't know the end of her story. I don't know if she was able to keep that dog or not, or if she had to give him up. That's something I do not know to this day. This is Roland. Basic income helped me achieve my goal of graduating from college. It's helped by going through school with a lot less stress. I'm achieving my goals for success. I'm very thankful and grateful of the Basic Income Project, McWitch. And Roland, he was struggling with homelessness, addiction, and poverty before the Basic Income Pilot. He used the money to go to school, and now he's working full-time as an electrician in his trade. And he's a wonderful person and a very kind person, and I was so glad to meet him. I only met him once in Thunder Bay, and I'm not sure the end of his story, but I believe that it was a happy ending. So those were only a few portraits, but you could see just from those few stories how people use basic income to improve their lives. People like me who were starting businesses, or people who went back to school, or people who moved into better and safer housing, and people that invested in their children and were able to be better parents for their children. Contrary to a lot of people who believe that you should pull yourselves up by the bootstraps and that people who get free money from the government and they're going to be parasites and leeches, they're going to steal money and just sit on their ass and play video games all day. That's not what happened. That's not what happened in Ontario, and that's not what has happened in any basic income pilot that's taken place all over the world. And there have been several basic income pilots that have been taking place all over the world. There have been pilots that have happened in the United States. There have been pilots in Finland, in Brazil. Alaska has had a basic income program in place for every single citizen of Alaska since 1982. And in fact, in Canada, in the 1970s, in the small town of Dauphin, Manitoba, there was another basic income experiment. And then that experiment, very much similar to Ontario, it got shelved early. And then all the data got put into boxes and hidden away and wasn't seen for ages until in 2011, a professor named Evelyn Forget dug out those boxes, poured through all the data, and you know what she found? She found that less kids were dropping out of high school. Less people were going to the hospitals because they were healthier. Crime dropped sharply, and the entire economy of Dauphin, Manitoba improved significantly. So people had the opportunity to pursue their dreams. This isn't a free handout from the government. This is an investment in humanity. And I believe in building a better world. I want to leave this world a better one than it was when I came into this world. And I hope you all share that belief as well. I also believe that this institution, this governmental institution, we are their bosses. I am Doug Ford's boss. I am Justin Trudeau's boss, the same that you are. These are not positions of power. They are positions of service, and they are meant to serve us. And how I want this government, these people in power who can make these decisions, how I want them to serve me is I want them to build that better world and imagine a better, more equitable, more just society where we all have the opportunity to pursue our dreams. And the wealth is there, the resources are there, everything is there for us to be able to do this and to give that better world to everyone. The fact that poverty even exists should throw you into a rage because it doesn't have to. And we've seen it. We've seen COVID-19 devastate the world, and we've seen it grind our economy to a halt We've seen many people lose their businesses, lose their livelihoods and their jobs. We've seen our friends and family get sick and people get affected, and it's been devastating. We've seen the cracks in our society exposed so greatly. And in times of tragedy, history has shown us the potential for greatness, that we can come out of this bigger and better than before, with a better and newer and bolder world imagined. And I know what side of history I want to be on. I want to be on the side that dreamt of that better world, that thought that original thought of a better world, and fought for everything that I could to get that better world. And I hope that that's the side of history you want to be on as well. So, welcome to my journey. These portraits have taken me all over the world, and people are still talking about these portraits 2 years later, and this journey is far from over. And this story is going to continue to manifest. This is bigger than Ontario. This is bigger than a few thousand people in Ontario. This is a new world order that we are imagining. And I can't wait to imagine it, and I can't wait to welcome it. Thank you.